the question that I think all of us need to ask ourselves in this season is, what is this season requiring of me? What is this season requiring of you?
I'm rolling now.
What's going on, Stay in the Course podcast listeners? Sometimes when you put your vision out there, it may seem crazy. Hey, I'm excited because I get to sit face to face with my guests, and now you guys get to see me.
Beautiful.
I know we have some incredible interviews and guests that you don't want to miss out on. What's going on, Stay in the Course podcast listeners? I'm your host, Jimmie Johnson. This show is a podcast where we get to sit down with some of the most influential thought leaders around the globe and hear their stories. My hope is that you're inspired, uplifted, motivated to fulfill your purpose and make a difference on this earth. Well, today I'm in the studio by myself. The world looks a little bit different now. We're in the midst of the COVID-19 coronavirus crisis. And so, obviously I would have loved to have a guest in studio with me, but changing times means that we have to do things a little bit differently. Obviously, I can do the Zoom calls, and I'm planning to do that in the future with different guests as we navigate through this journey. But as I'm recording this episode, much of the U.S. and people all around the country are probably under some sort of stay-at-home order. And I pray that you guys are honoring our government leaders and staying safe by staying indoors, practicing physical distancing. I also want to take this opportunity to thank all of the healthcare professionals that are on the front lines of this crisis, really doing their very best to make sure that we come out of this as best as we possibly can. Nurses like my sister Nadia, who is working in New Orleans countless hours to do just that. They're doing the best they can with the limited resources they have. I also want to offer my sincere condolences to anyone out there who may have lost a family member or even a friend as a result of COVID-19. I can't even imagine what you may be going through in this time, but just know that we're praying for you, and we know that you're going to get through this, and we're going to get through this together. So today, my goal for this podcast episode is really to provide some hope. We're all living in a new reality than we were just a few weeks ago, right? And some of us are incredibly blessed, like myself, who have the opportunity to still be able to go to work every single day. But I also am aware that there are millions of Americans all across this country right now that have been furloughed or laid off. Whatever that looks like for you right now, I just want you to know that your new reality is my new reality. It's our new reality. This pandemic, we didn't put this on ourselves. Like, no one could have prepared for this. I know some of us may be better positioned financially as a result of this, crisis, but were we prepared? No. So let's take the pressure off of ourselves and come in at this in a different posture. We didn't get here by ourselves, and we're not going to get out of this by ourselves. So, this won't change the fact that you have bills to pay and put food on the table for your family, but it will just allow you to put this into perspective that this is not just one person's challenge. It's a challenge that all of us are facing. So once again, in the next 15 to 20 minutes, I want to share my perspective on how I believe you and I can not only survive during this crisis, but thrive in this season and beyond. So some of you may be asking, what makes me an expert on this subject? Let me be clear. I'm not. None of us are. However, I did do some research and curated a list of proven practical steps that I think we all can take that I know will help us better ourselves, our families, and or our business. First, I want to start off by saying that after this virus passes, if we don't learn anything from this crisis, it honestly will just be a huge waste of time and an opportunity. You may have heard this saying before, but I believe it to be true. Never waste a crisis. Never waste a crisis. Each of us before, during, and after this crisis will be at different stages of our life. Prior to COVID-19, maybe you were consumed by your business, career, schoolwork, and the list can go on and on. Today, many of us have been forced to now sit still. We're crammed up in our homes. We're under quarantine. And, so many of us probably obsessed with social media, all the different things, Netflix, the news, the fear of the news, as many would say. And quite frankly, I think for some of us, it was much needed. One of my favorite leadership coaches, Dr. John C. Maxwell, puts it this way. He says, rest is an investment. So you may be wondering, rest in a crisis? Yes, rest in a crisis. One, this is what Maxwell says. Here's why he says that it's important for us to rest. One, it allows you to recover. The question that I think all of us need to ask ourselves in this season is, what is this season requiring of me? What is this season requiring of you? Maybe this is a time for you to grow spiritually. Maybe you've slacked off and you stopped going to church, and now here's an opportunity for you to spend more time reading your Bible, actually attending a church online. I work for a church, Faith Church. We invite you to join us at any one of our services. Also, this could be a great time for you to spend more time with your family. If you're like many people in this country, you're obsessed with your business, you're obsessed with your career, and a lot of times our family suffers as a result of us, exhausting ourselves, pouring into material things in a lot of ways. This is also a great time for us to focus on our physical health. I know that I've been spending a lot of time in the house doing push-ups and home workouts. And if I'm being honest and transparent, before the pandemic took place, I wasn't in the gym as consistently as I should have been. So now I'm at home, I'm eating. I definitely need to take care of my body. This is also an opportunity for you to take care of your mental health. So many of us sometimes mistaken our mental health or don't take our mental health seriously. This is a time you can do that. We have telemedicine. You can literally call a doctor over your telephone today. This is also a time that you can spend time revising or working on a business plan. Maybe you have this business idea that you've been sitting on for a very long time. This is the opportunity for you to pull out those notebooks, go ahead and research online and prepare yourself so that after this crisis, you can take a step to actually launching your business. And maybe you're a business owner and you're like, well, I'm in the midst of this crisis. I can't rest right now in this moment. Maybe you can't rest, but maybe you can produce content for your business. I know that's something that my wife, Pascal, is doing. She's a cosmetologist. She can't work on clients' hair, but she is producing content. You can also declutter around your home. I'm sure all of us can think of those side projects that we probably should have tackled last year that we didn't get a chance to. Well, here's an opportunity to take advantage of that time as well. You can write a book. You can start a blog. You can launch your own podcast like this show right here. You can also start your own YouTube channel, whatever that looks like for you. Number two, Maxwell says, we have to allow time to reflect. We have to have time to reflect. I really think we should ask ourselves this question. When was the last time that we took time for ourselves to reflect on where we are in life? So many times we're just kind of going through the motion. And if you haven't had time to reflect on where you are in life, maybe you should be asking yourself, okay, well, now that I'm sitting still, okay, where am I at in my life? What direction do I want to go in? And then how did I get there? Or how can I get to where I want to be in life? Not too long ago, I finished reading a book by Addison Bevere. He's an author and speaker, and he wrote the book Saints Becoming More Than Just Christians. And a few lines from a chapter I was reading really convicted me, right? It reads, many of us can be found scrolling through our feed while we brush our teeth or sit at red lights. We don't create space for deep thought. We don't make room to know the conditions of our souls. How can we know the otherness of God when we're afraid of being still? Wow. Very insightful, thought-provoking. And honestly, I'm still trying to unpack this because it's extremely important for us to have downtime. Fellas, I know the ladies take this very seriously. If you have a wife or a girlfriend, they're like, hey, I'm going to get my nails done. I'm going to get my feet done, get a massage or whatever. Fellas, the ladies are smart. They're taking time for themselves. This is a time where you can just get away from all that's going on in your life, and it also presents a time for you to reflect. Number 3, Maxwell says we have to allow ourselves to rekindle. When you rekindle, you're reminded why you love what you do. It also allows you to resurrect old dreams. Like if you're so busy doing what you do day to day, it doesn't allow space for you to think about things that you once considered doing or things that you plan to do. I believe when you're mentally and physically spent, you can't enjoy the fruits of your labor. I remember when I first met my wife, Pascal, all she would do was work. I mean, this girl is an extremely hard worker, a businesswoman, and she's a small business owner. And so if you're a small business owner, you know this, that if you don't put in the work, no one else will. You're the CEO, you're the employee. So you have to do everything necessary to make sure that your business is successful and flourishes. And so I remember when we were dating, I was like, sweetheart, let's take some time for you. Let you go out there, get your nails done. And obviously she takes care of herself. She does her own hair because she's a cosmetologist. She got her nails done. But then we started to take trips and take time off to really enjoy, the fruits of our labor. I also believe in this crisis, it's important for us to stimulate our mind. Recently, I had the opportunity to participate in this Zoom call with several Christian business leaders. And the conversation was strictly about how to help small businesses navigate through this crisis. And what I loved about this conversation, it talked about how we could move in the weeks, the months, and the year to come. And one of the business owners that were in this particular Zoom call happened to be the CEO of ChickfilA, Dan Truitt-Cathy. And if you know anything about me, you know that I love the franchise ChickfilA. I love their business model. And most importantly, I love their customer service. And in this call, Cathy shared some of the things that his company did prior to this outbreak that not only positioned them to survive, but thrive. You know, one of the biggest advancements, he says, is that they put a lot of emphasis and efforts and in resources into building their app, the ChickfilA app, which engages customers in ways that a lot of businesses have failed to do. And right now, that's paying off for them tremendously. Cathy says, even though all of their restaurants, dining spaces are closed, he says they're only servicing clients through the drive-through. Many of their franchises have seen an uptick in business. So my biggest takeaway from Cathy and something that he said is that leaders must be fast and continuous learners. In the Zoom call, the multi-billionaire, you heard that right, the multi-billionaire was wearing this name tag, a Chick-fil-A name tag, and it had his name on it. And then it also said in training. You see, the moment we think we're too competent to learn is the moment we fail and fall behind. If there's one thing I'm certain about, is that Chick-fil-A is always learning. It's always adapting and changing to best satisfy its customer base. It's really doing whatever it can to meet the needs of its customers. And that's why it continues to grow. And it's one of the most, it's probably one of the best, fast food chains there are in this country. So as leaders, we can't meet the needs of the people around us if we're not continuously sharpening our minds. So what are some of those ways that we can do that? You can read a book. You can watch documentaries. I love watching documentaries. As much as I love watching Netflix, I love looking at documentaries, educational documentaries. I'm a big fan of watching movies that are going to add value to my life. Number 3, you can do this, what you're doing currently right now. You can listen or watch podcasts. Educational podcasts that are going to help propel you into your preferred future. And then number 4, take an online class or an online course. And then, or you can take up a trade. Now there's so many community colleges and universities that have now moved their schooling online. So you have an opportunity to take advantage of those resources, because not only will they stretch your mind, but they will help cultivate new ideas that will best position yourself on the other side of this. Number 3, find opportunities to shine in this crisis. During the financial crisis in 2008, there were so many businesses that came out of the turmoil, right? businesses that, many of us use today, businesses like Uber and Slack and Airbnb, they were all birthed out of the financial crisis. And this is a time that I believe we can think about needs that are out there. And if you see a problem, you come with a solution and you seize the moment, that's when you can birth a very, very good business. So I think, for example, I'm just going to go through a list of names of businesses that were birthed out of this 2008 financial crisis and show you how they capitalize in many ways. So one platform is Instagram. Many of us right now, you're probably seeing a promo clip about the podcast on Instagram. I use that tool to promote my business. I use the tool to promote, my wife uses the tool to promote her business. Churches are using it. Businesses all over the globe are using Instagram as a means of advertising. WhatsApp. It's a cross-platform messaging and video, a voice over IP service that allows you to communicate with people all over the globe. Then there's Dropbox. It's a service where you can send files over the cloud network. Then there's Slack, as I mentioned, which is the smart alternative to email. Many people are using that to communicate in-house communications in businesses and in corporations. Then there's Airbnb. What I love about Airbnb is that they're basically the provider of places for people to stay when traveling, but yet they don't own any of their properties. The same thing for the business and Lyft model. It's a ride sharing, Uber in particular is a ride sharing app. It also focuses on electric bikes, scooters, and even now food delivery, which in this season is pretty beneficial. And at last check, if you look at any of these companies, they're still managing to do okay. Now, obviously, during this crisis, Uber and Airbnb are probably not seeing a ton of business, but yet they're still in business. All of these companies saw a problem, took advantage of the opportunity, and are now meeting those needs. So here's what I want to say to you. There are companies in that financial crisis that didn't adapt or evolve. Companies that we all remember, like Blockbuster. Who remembers going into Blockbuster, renting a movie or a video game, then coming back a few days later and returning it? Now you don't have to go into a physical location to do any of those things. And that's what birthed Netflix. Obviously, Netflix is one of those amazing streaming services where we can watch videos, TV shows, documentaries, you name it, and the list goes on and on. Another business that had to shutter its doors following the 2008 crisis was Toys R Us, right? How many of us remember as a kid going into this business and picking out your favorite toy? Or maybe parents were buying baby clothes or kids' clothes or whatever you may have purchased from Toys R Us. Now Toys R Us is online because all of their physical brick and mortar locations have shut down because of businesses like Amazon. But there are companies that reinvented themselves, and those are companies like Microsoft. Microsoft was the PC giant, but then Apple came around and Apple was killing them with PCs. And then Apple also made the transition into the phone space and then tablets and now watches, and they do music, streaming, and all of those different services. So Apple pushed Microsoft to adapt and evolve. Also, there's giants like Disney. Disney is this mass media conglomerate. It's an entertainment company. It has the Disney Plus platform. It also has the Disney parks. Disney is another company that also adapted and evolved with the changing times. So I really believe we all have an opportunity to do what many of these founders did. Today, we're right where they once were. Every day as I'm driving around or I'm at work, I'm just thinking about what is the next big thing. But it's not just what's the next big thing. What is the next big need? And how can I provide a solution to that need? Lastly, don't fight the change. Embrace this crisis. The lack of normalcy is our new reality. I know many of us want to believe things are going to go back to normal, and I wish I'm honestly wrong in saying that things won't get back to normal, but just the way it looks, it doesn't look like we're going to go back to what we were used to. So over the last few weeks, I know many of us have been, obsessively watching the news, hearing press briefings from federal, state, and local leaders, right? informing us about the day-to-day changes and impacts of this deadly disease. And their goal is obviously to reassure us that this soon shall pass. And hear me out, it will pass. But I'm also hearing language like things are going to get back to normal. I really don't think things are going to get back to normal. As much as we may want things to go back to normal, you can't go back to normal when normal changed forever. The future isn't kind to the unprepared, so prepare. And those are not my words. In fact, those are the words of Carey Nieuwhof. He's a thought leader. He's a pastor of a church in Canada. And I love when he says what he says about that. Like, we can't go back to normal. Also, the late Jack Welch, former chairman and CEO of General Electric, once said, change before you have to. The worst mistake we can make is not changing, adjusting to our constantly evolving environment. You see, Microsoft wasn't prepared for Apple and cell phones. Blockbuster wasn't prepared for Netflix. Toys R Us wasn't prepared for Amazon. You see the pattern there? So I completely agree with Carey Nieuwhof, who's an incredible thought leader and pastor. He, like many churches across the country, are seeing tremendous growth because of their digital footprint. At Faith Church, where I'm currently on staff, we're also experiencing rapid growth right now online. We're doing church a lot differently these days. Not only we are providing a virtual experience on weekends for our weekend services, we're also providing social interaction and engagement with our parishioners throughout the week, through our young adults, through our students, through our kids and tots. And then we're also providing virtual worship experiences for the kids as well. So the technology is there, and we have to use it for our benefit. So it's not just churches that are changing with the times. School districts all across the country have now been forced to facilitate entire school days online. Who would have ever thought that we would not be able to have to worry about the bell ringing to go to class? Now you can just log onto your laptop, go to class, and then you're at home, so you don't have to go anywhere. And then businesses that never had a strategy to do work online are now having to make that change. You would be silly to think in this time, in this space, that our lives and our businesses are going to go back to what it used to be. I predict many business leaders are going to be reconsidering whether they should even have an office space. I think they're going to slash those overhead costs, those offices and facilities if they don't need them, and completely work virtually, especially if the production remains high and the profits still come in. Obviously, companies like Amazon are going to expand its footprint online and also through facilities and warehouses, because they're constantly shipping out stuff to their consumers all over the globe. But I also believe our generation and beyond has an opportunity to become the next Instagram, Slack, or Airbnb. As much as it's painful for us to go through this experience, it could also be a time of revival and a time of rebirth, a clean slate, or a second chance for us to really accomplish something that we dream up. As we close, let's recap some of the big takeaways from this episode. 1, find rest in this crisis. 2, stimulate your mind during this crisis. 3, take advantage of opportunities to shine amidst this crisis. And number 4, lastly and not least, do not fight the change, but embrace it. Thanks again for tuning in to this episode of the Staying the Course podcast. Obviously, our world is much different today, but let's continue to, sharpen our minds. Let's continue to lean into podcasts and read and to really grow during this time. So once again, just thanks for watching another episode of the Staying the Course podcast. Do me a favor right now. Go to my YouTube channel, subscribe. You can rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts. And also, I just recently launched my website, JimmieSJohnsonJr.com. Jimmie, JIMMIES Johnson Jr.com. Go ahead, check it out. I want you to subscribe to my mailing list where I send out encouragement weekly, and also obviously the latest release of the Staying the Course podcast. But once again, thanks for joining me, and I can't wait to see you guys next time.